G'day guys, welcome to Boxing Deep Dive. I'm Lyndon Hosking. I'm here with my co-host Grant Tassie Brown, and welcome to Classic Fights. How are you, Tassie?
Good, thanks, Lyndon.
It's all happening at the moment, mate. Yeah, I know you've got a show getting organised now, so I appreciate you coming on and to relive some of the greatest fights in the past, mate. And it is yours this week. Again, I'm not sure whether we actually spoke about it last week, but mate, I think you've almost got the, what would you say, the holy grail of classic fights. I would think you've chosen tonight. We've had a lot over the past nearly 12 months. Who have you got tonight?
I think probably could have been or should have been done earlier, and it's funny
100%.
why sort of no one has, and I think we all was probably meant to do this, but it's got to be the ARTURO Gatti Mickey Ward trilogy. And
Certainly does. Arturo Gatti, yep, Mickey Ward.
Especially their first fight. I mean, still one of my favourite fight probably of all time. I think round, was it 9?
Yeah, round 9. Yep.
The famous round where one of the best rounds of boxing ever, and I think we got to talk about these two guys. So these guys shared something very special. They become best mates afterwards. Mickey Ward become Gatti's trainer.
Did. Yep.
Close bonding. If you fight someone 3 times, you obviously share something. Blood, sweat, and tears, and these guys, yeah.
No, 100%, mate. What I'm going to do, because we've got 3 fights to get through, I'm actually going to start the footage straight away because we've got a lot to talk about over the top of them. We'll just get the footage going, and probably arguably the best fighter of them. I agree with you. I think this was. I think 3 was okay as well. 2 was, I think, a clear-cut Gatti decision. I'll get the ball rolling there, mate. But let's paint the picture for starters. So this first fight took place on what did it say there? It was
I think it was Ward's hometown.
No, he didn't, mate. No.
Yeah, May 18th, 2002. Yep. So it was in Connecticut. It was the Mohegan Sun Casino in Uncasville, Connecticut. So I think at the time, to paint the picture, Mickey Ward 37-11, which is surprising. He was probably perceived more as of a journeyman back then, wasn't he? Where Arturo Gatti 34-5 was definitely favoured to win.
Yeah, 100%. And Gatti had been working with Buddy McGirt. He's trying to get in the box a bit more, but he still had the old habit of falling into a slugfest. And Mickey Ward, just a good, honest fighter. Tough as nails, and vicious body puncher. Very underrated body puncher, and this was all action go to woe. Gatti tried the box, but Ward drawn him into a slugfest.
It's a classic case of styles make fights, isn't it? Because as I said, when these two guys were matched, it was probably seen as more of a, I won't say a tune-up for Gatti, but it was definitely a fight that he was favoured to win, where Mickey Ward, obviously with the 37-11 record, hadn't exactly set the world on fire. He'd had a world title fight against a fighter that Aussie fans will know really well in Vince Phillips. He was stopped in 3 rounds in 1997. And he'd actually fought a couple of guys that were familiar with Aussie fans. Marvin Garris, if you remember, fought Lester Ellis, I think back in 1986, 87, something like that. Mickey Ward stopped him in 2 rounds, and later on he stopped Mark Fernandez in 3 rounds. You remember Mark Fernandez fought Barry Michael. He fought and got stopped. I think in 2 or 3. No, it might have been 4 rounds. I think, but he turned pro in '85. He'd had a few, and you've seen the movie, obviously. Oh, you can see he got dropped. Was that a low blow there, or that was a?
I think it was. They called it a low blow.
Yeah. So Mickey Ward, you've seen the movie, of course. You'll know his life story a little bit more. But he had fights where, like for instance, the Mike Mungin fight in '89. He weighed 136 pounds. Mungin weighed 145 pounds. He took these types of fights just to try and get himself up there. He had some pretty credible fights. He'd lost fights to Frankie Warren, Harold Brazier, Charles Murray, all established contenders at the time. And of course, the Vince Phillips fight. Lost to Zab Judah in 1998 as well. And also Jesse James Lahar as well. He'd lost a technical decision in 5. So his resume was good, but he'd never really had that signature win. And this was probably the first one of his career, looking back.
Yeah, 100%. This was a very a big moment for Ward and Gatti. Such a big name in boxing. One of the most all-action fighters ever, loved by the fight fans. Always gave every bit of his heart and soul in every fight. So this was a big fight for Ward.
And those body shots as well, which he was known for, very limited in certain ways, but that left rip to the body always did some damage. As it did in this, he had the only legitimate knockdown in the fight, which obviously was...
Switch to southpaw.
Yeah,
Switch to southpaw, usually, and dig in, usually the right rip, a lot of the time.
Yeah.
He changed his feet and sort of...
Yeah, well, ARTURO Gatti... his lead up to his fight, as I said before, he went in at 34-5 with 28 KOs. So he'd held the IBF Super Featherweight title. He'd won that over Tracy Harris-Patterson. He won that in 95, made 3 defences. Lost the title in 98 with an 8th round stoppage to Angel Manfredi. Had the 2 losses to Ivan Robinson in 98, both 10 round losses. Yeah, and then of course he stepped up and fought Oscar De La Hoya in 2001 and was stopped in 5 rounds. So it definitely had the pedigree. We'll go over what happened after this fight with both of these guys' careers. But at this stage, I mean, did you think when the fight was matched up, do you think that the promoters had any idea what they were actually putting together in this fight that will be such a legendary trilogy?
No, I definitely don't think so. That was a body shot that I think dropped Gatti then. He was pretty much gone here. No, I don't think anyone could predict that these guys would make, such legendary fights. And also, too, their third fight, I think it was the first ever million-plus fight to not be a title fight.
Yeah, well, I didn't mention that either there. None of these fights were actually title fights, which is probably the most surprising thing as well. They were just 10-round fights.
I think it was one of the first big paydays for a non-title fight in their third fight.
Yeah, we can see here, this is round 9, so this was voted the round of the year, and I think might have been the round of the decade or even round of the century, I think some people even called it, from memory. But just the heart of these two guys, you've seen at the start there that Mickey Ward dropped in with the body shot, could have easily called it quits right there and then Gatti, but obviously that's not in his makeup, and you can see here he ends up putting Ward on the back foot.
The damage now. Ward comes back here though, again with that body shot. Again.
Yep. Just an amazing battle to think that the to and fro, and as I said at the start, the styles of these two guys. Mickey Ward had lost 11 fights up to this stage. As I said, he'd probably just been more of a club fighter.
Gatti's badly hurt here.
Gatti, for sure.
This is almost... The referee could have stopped it. You wouldn't have argued one bit.
Nah, that's right. We can see there 10 seconds to go. And to think that he's actually fighting back.
Back again. Yeah, he's fighting back, yeah.
And, and on top of that, too, at the start of the fight, too, Mickey Ward got a cut pretty much in the first minute. A pretty bad cut, and it bled for the whole time. So just unbelievable guts and heart from these two guys. And to think that they'd done 9 rounds here and they had another one to go, just an amazing fight.
Yeah, Buddy McGirt really asked him, did he want to continue in this last round? He really put the question to him.
Yeah. But, it probably epitomised Gatti's career, didn't it, that he was never out of it. And Ward, for that matter, as well. That Ward had Gatti down. Gatti came back, then Ward came back at him. Just amazing. And see, this is the last round, the last 30 seconds of the fight, and to think that they're still going at it after 9 rounds and 2.5 minutes is just incredible.
Yeah, unbelievable. Look, and this is what true fighters are all about. And these two guys shared their blood with each other, and and I'm happy that they both. Got paid well in the next couple of fights because, a fight like this, at this pace, to be hurt and come back, just for our viewing for the fans, it's unbelievable, mate. They gave their health on the line.
Yeah. Well, that was the first fight there. So the cards for that one were 94-93 for Ward. 95-93 for Ward and a 94-94 draw. So the interesting thing about that is if Ward hadn't scored the knockdown, It would have been a majority draw, would it? Because he would have one card would have been a draw. He would have lost on the other card, but he would have lost. Yeah, well, he would have actually lost the fight. So it was quite telling that he would have, that knockdown. So just an amazing fight that was. So they met a few months later in Atlantic City this time. And obviously a lot bigger fight than the first one. Obviously, we all knew what we're going to get. Obviously, both fighters probably approached it a little bit differently. This time, Ward was probably the hunted rather than the hunter, rather than the first fight. Gatti, you could see, to come prepared for this one. He was switched on. He wanted to make amends. Yeah. And, and he obviously started pretty quick there as well. Just fought a different fight.
Yeah, he definitely he boxed a lot more this fight. He sort of hit and moved more,
right?
and I think he scores a knockdown as well during the fight. But yeah, him and Buddy McGirt obviously had the plan. This is a knockdown here. Him and Buddy McGirt had a bit of a game plan to try and limit Ward in close, limit that body attack, and just sort of use his boxing skills, because Gatti could box. He preferred the fight, but he could box.
Yeah, well, it was a smart decision in the end, wasn't it? And probably also in the third fight, that even though you can see him wailing away there, he did rely more on his speed and his footwork, his evasiveness and defence. Because really, Ward, when you think about it, didn't really have another gear to go to. He'd fought to his maximum in that first fight, where Gatti, of course, we probably always knew he was probably the more elite fighter, and I think he just, he had another gear to go to, where, as I said, Ward didn't.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly right. And look, the fact that, as I said, look, he learned from the first fight. But McGirt would have said you can't go having fights like that at this stage of your career. He'd already had a lot of wars. If he had any more fights like the first one, you just can't keep that going. You can't keep a career being hit the way he was hit in that fight.
Well, he obviously was on the receiving end of several beatings. They had the De La Hoya one, of course. Mayweather, of course, later on in his career, went to town on him as well. And luckily for Ward, this was pretty much the end for him after the next fight. But it's amazing. I know I said before they had the movie about Mickey Ward's career or his life called The Fighter. There was actually talk there might be a sequel based on these three fights. It'd be amazing to actually bring that to life, wouldn't it?
Well, 100%. There should be. I mean, look, as I said, not many fighters have a trilogy like this. Not many people, have that friendship like they did, and there definitely is a movie for it. I mean, the fact that then Ward trained Gatti and Gatti obviously passes away, and yeah, look, it's a great story. That's why I picked this fight, because this whole trilogy is just amazing.
Yeah, you're right. As you said at the start, I can't believe that we haven't had this fight beforehand. We've had several wars on here, but this almost should have been the first one picked. But it's a shame that we haven't got the other guys here to relive it to, because I mean, I think everyone in their right mind has seen this fight. They've all got their own thoughts on it. They all remember what they were doing when they watched it. I mean, it's just one of those fights that just live in I won't say infamy, but just one of those famous fights that you just remember. It's almost like one of the Rocky movies, isn't it?
Oh, mate, this is exactly like a Rocky movie, 100%. I mean, geez. You don't get much more like it than this.
And to think that, what round are we up to here? I think you always even see Ward staggering back to his corner then, and he'd obviously, I think I read too also that he'd been clipped when that knockdown. He got clipped on the back of the ear, which obviously affected his equilibrium as well. And he reckons for the rest of the fight, he really struggled for the rest of it. So I mean, just again, the heart of this guy. We're in round 8 here, of course. You wouldn't know it because the 8th round's the same pace as the first round, but you can just see that Ward fighting a lot smarter, picking his shots, really. And what I think I found different to this one as well, unlike the first fight, he would throw his punches and then he'd be off to the side. He wouldn't allow Ward to actually set himself, especially for that left rib to the body. He would punch and then he'd be off either to the left or off to the right.
Yeah, well, I mean, Buddy McGirt, he was a great fighter and great trainer too, and they obviously worked on it, mate. Look, they would have said, look, you're the better boxer. He only does trouble when he's in close to that rib, so just try and take it off him, try and counter that, and by good movement, you got to get set in close to throw something like that. So, he fought exactly the right fight.
Yeah, you can see there. I didn't mention at the start. It was November 23, 2002. So I think it was about 6 months after the first fight. But and it's interesting that Ward's last 3 fights were actually against Arturo Gatti, and we'll talk about it after the third fight in a second. But it was amazing that after the fight that Ward would actually be Arturo Gatti's trainer. It just put a nice little bow on the whole story, didn't it?
Yeah, it did, mate, 100%. But just a shame, obviously, what happens later too with Gatti. Lost his life through suspicious circumstances, and warrior in the ring like that. It's a shame he's not with us now.
Yeah, no, that's for sure, mate. So. But so on that, I mean, as I said, like he did train him after this, and just as I said, it was a great thing that Ward actually became his trainer. Obviously, it was laced with the tragedy as well that Arturo Gatti died in 2009, like you said, in suspicious circumstances, and I suppose we'll never know. But either way you look at it, just tragic and triumphant in the same sort of breath, isn't it? But so that's the end of the 10th round, I think. There, yep. That's the end of the 10th. Arturo Gatti knows he's got it. Mickey Ward knows he's let it go. So you can see there the decision there. It was a unanimous decision to Gatti, 98-91 times 2, and 98-90 for Gatti as well. So really a clear-cut decision for Arturo Gatti. You can see there the unanimous decision. So, and I don't think there's any arguments on that one. On to the third fight now. Again, took place at the Atlantic City Boardwalk Hall. You can see there June 7, 2003. And I'm not sure what's happened to my green screen there, so I will put him up there. Where are we? There we go. I'm back. Can't have the green screen there, Tassie. But so
100%.
naked almost. But the third fight too. I thought even though it was a great fight, probably a replay of the second fight where Gatti again just fought to the same plan. You can see there he punches, he moves off to the side, doesn't give Ward a chance to set and brace himself for those hooks to the head and body. And it was just a really smart way to fight. And sometimes you see that in these types of fights, don't you, Tassie? The elite. Probably the more elite of the two. In this case, it was Gatti. By the time they get to the third fight, has made the adjustments, tweaked a few different things, and they probably win the third fight easier than any of them.
100%, mate. Yeah, look, you can be caught by surprise in the first one, but if you're generally the better fighter, you're gonna adjust and do it a lot better.
Yeah. So, as we mentioned before, after this fight, Ward became Gatti's trainer. He had another 7 fights after this one. He went 4-3. Had a 5th round KO of Jesse James Lehar in 2005, which was a really good win for him. The same year, he was stopped by Floyd Mayweather in 6, and then he lost his last 2 fights to Carlos Baldemir by 9th round KO and Alfonso Gomez by 7th round knockout. Retired in 2007 with a 40-win, 9-loss and 31 KO career. So, I think even though he lost 9 fights in the end, I don't think it really summed up how great a fighter that Arturo Gatti was. And I think if you ask anyone who the favourite action fighter is of all time, most people will say this guy.
Oh, mate, 100%. I mean, geez, most boxing fans are going to think of Arturo Gatti because blood, sweat and tears. I mean, when he fought Gabrielas and guys like that, he got dropped, he came out and knocked him out. And, obviously the fights of Ivan Robertson were too, or I could have even picked that fight because then both them fights were great. Now Ward, he was a bit below the De La Hoyas and Mayweathers, but he was good enough for pretty much everyone else. And if you think he'd have to be in everyone's top 3 or 5 all-time action fighters.
Yeah. I remember, our good mate Bomber Peden, obviously former world champion in his own right, telling stories about when he was based in the States sparring with Arturo Gatti, and he said, when you walked in the gym with him, you knew there was no sparring. It was just on from the word go, and that's And that's how you get your ranking, your brownie points over there, isn't it? By going to war with these types of guys. But they did have a really close bond. If you talk to Bomber, he was absolutely shattered when Arturo Gatti died because he had such respect for him. And if you know Bomber, it's very hard to get his respect, isn't it? So to think that he thought so much of Arturo Gatti, it was really sad. And he died in 2009, as we said before, which was really, really sad. And but it doesn't denigrate his legacy. Everyone loves Arturo Gatti, and in this fight, obviously he proved he was the better man in the trilogy fight.
100%. I mean,
Did you see he gets dropped there?
A beloved legend, and what can you say, mate? He's sadly missed, and boxing's better off for having Arturo Gatti in our lives,
And the funny thing is too, one of the fights I remember him most for is not really these fights. It's the fight with Joey Gamachi. You remember that one where he pretty much knocked him out with the first shot and pulverised him with the second shot, and then decked him with the third shot. I mean, he was out after the first shot, but it was just a bang, bang, bang. I think it was an uppercut, left hook, overhand right. And poor old Joey Gamachi, I think, woke up, probably 3 days later, I think. But yeah, just one of those fighters who
good fighter.
Yeah,
good fighter in his day too, Joey Gamachi.
Yeah, he was. I think he just went up. I think too far in that fight as far as weight goes, and Arturo Gatti was just way too big. And I think there was concerns from before that fight that Arturo Gatti might do some damage to him, and that he did. So you can see here we're in the 7th round, June 7, 2003. You can see Ward there. I think he's probably got the most out of himself that he possibly can. You can see here he looks pretty resigned to the fact that Arturo Gatti's got him covered this time. But as he did in all his fights, he dug deep. He was busted up. He was cut, hurt, tired, but he would not take a backward step. And you can see there still ripping and hooking to the body. Just a great fighter as well, in his own right, in his own way. I won't say he was a great fighter as far as skill goes and achievements goes, but just one of those fighters that you need in every era. To make these fights memorable.
100%. I mean, but I mean, look, he was a multi-weight. I think he was like a 3-division world champion, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And at one stage with Buddy, he was boxing very well. Before he fought Mayweather, he was boxing quite well. After these fights, he went on a good run. He beat Leonard Dorian, former Olympian, and world champion. Yeah.
And as I said before, Jesse James Lehar and was a good win as well. Obviously, world champion in his
was
own
a very
right
good
as
win.
well. So you can see here we're in the last couple of minutes of the 10th and final round. The final scores in this fight were 96-93 for Gatti. Again, 96-93 for Gatti. Excuse me, and 97-92 for Gatti. So a clear-cut win. I think it was, a real full stop to put on the trilogy that he was the superior fighter. But I think in this type of trilogy, it probably ended up not being about who was the better fighter, or it was the legacy that they'd left in boxing.
100%, mate. We'll talk about these guys forever. Their names coexist with each other.
Yeah.
So you don't get much bigger than that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Mickey Ward still goes to the International Boxing Hall of Fame inductions every year, and he's treated like the celebrity that he is there. Everyone loves Mickey Ward. It's just a shame that Arturo Gatti wasn't there with him to relive the wars that they had. So you can see there, again, Arturo Gatti, unanimous decision winner to put a full stop on the trilogy. As we said before, he died in 2009, ended with a 30... What have we got there? Sorry, I haven't got it there with Arturo Gatti. But yeah, he had 40 win, 9 loss, 31 KO record. Mickey Ward finished with a 38-13 with a 27 knockout record. But they'll forever be linked to this trilogy. So, mate, great pick. Really awesome selection. I can't believe, as I said, that we haven't had this one before. But this probably epitomises the word classic fight.
It sure does, mate. It was going to be my first one, but I guess I just held off, and it's probably a bit obvious. But I mean, it was left there for a while. No one picked it, so I had to go with it.
Yeah, good stuff, mate. Well, it's back to me next week. I haven't really decided which one I'm going to go for yet, so I'm going to surprise everyone next week with that one. But rest assured, I don't think it's going to be up to the quality of this one. It's going to take a lot of topping, but either way, we'll come up with something. So mate, always great to have you along, and can't wait to next week.
Dennis Hogan versus old mate. What's your mate's name?
Wade Ryan.
Wade Ryan versus Dennis Hogan.
Don't think that's ever going to be a classic fight, that one, mate. We might put that one on the back burner, I reckon. But no, we'll definitely come up with something. But if you're out there and you're watching, we would love to hear your suggestions as well. So put them in the comments and or messages or whatever it might be, and let us know what fights you might want us to cover. There's plenty of great fights in history, of course. It's a never-ending well of fights we could cover. So, but as I said, if you've got one that you would like us to cover, let us know. So, thanks again, Tassie. We'll see you next week, mate. And always great to have you along.
Thank you, mate.
See you, mate.